Your hands stop working before your mind does. That is the part nobody warns you about. You still believe you could stand up, walk, make a decision, but your fingers have already gone. Somewhere in the last hour, your body decided your fingertips were no longer worth heating and pulled the blood back toward the organs that matter. And now you are holding a stone tool you cannot feel in a hand that no longer belongs to you. We are starting at hour 1 on the open steppe, roughly 20,000 years ago, at the coldest point our species has ever had to survive in numbers, and you are the one who has to make it through the next 2 days. No fire yet, no shelter, just you, the wind, and a body about to fail in a very specific order. Your body is not going to collapse all at once. It will fail like a machine, system by system, in a sequence almost eerily predictable, and understanding it is the only thing that has ever stood between a human being and the cold. So how do you make it through 2 days when the temperature itself is trying to kill you, one system at a time? The steppe grass is stiff with frost, clicking against your legs as you move. The air does not feel cold so much as sharp, like breathing through a blade. This is the height of the last glacial period, when global temperatures sat roughly 6 degrees Celsius below where they stand today, a gap that sounds small until you remember it buried half of North America and Europe under ice sheets thick enough to swallow mountains. The far north ran 14 degrees colder still. You are not in the worst of it. You are standing in something survivable. Barely. Hour 1. Your core is still normal, close to 37 degrees Celsius, and your body is already fighting. Blood vessels near your skin narrow. Vasoconstriction, the first defense any body deploys against cold, redirecting warm blood toward organs that cannot cool. You feel it as skin going pale, fingers and toes numb first because they are the first sacrifice. The body decides, instantly, better a frostbitten hand than a heart that slows. If this is the first time you have thought about your body as a machine making triage decisions without asking you, subscribe now, because every video here does exactly this, showing you machinery underneath things you assume were simple. We are only at hour 1. By hour 3 or 4, the shivering starts in earnest, deep, uncontrollable, muscles firing in rapid contractions purely to generate heat. Exhausting, and one of the most effective heating mechanisms your body has. But shivering costs fuel, and fuel is the second system already quietly failing. Your body has, at this point, roughly 1 day's worth of stored glycogen, quick access sugar meant to last hours, not days. Within 12 to 24 hours without food, it runs out, and your liver starts gluconeogenesis, manufacturing new glucose from amino acids pulled from muscle and glycerol pulled from fat. Your body has begun quietly to eat itself to keep your brain fed. Not injury, design. The same design that has kept humans alive through every famine and winter our species has faced. You call a skipped breakfast an inconvenience. Your ancestor's body, 12 hours into exposure, is already running that shift with nothing to trigger it. Cold and hunger share one currency. Heat, made by burning fuel, there is not enough of. This is the part almost nobody survived alone. Humans of the last glacial maximum did not face the open steppe with bare skin and bravery. They faced it with an invention so quiet it barely looks like one, a bone sliver, sharpened at one end, pierced with a tiny eye at the other. The eyed needle, appearing in Eurasia roughly 40,000 years ago. And everything about surviving deep cold changes the moment it shows up. Before the needle, clothing meant draping, a hide thrown over the shoulders full of gaps an ice age wind could pour through. After it, clothing meant tailoring, tight seams, pelts cut to the shape of a body. Researchers studying the fur-bearing remains found beside these needles, fox, hare, wolf, have reconstructed fitted garments with an inner layer against the skin and an outer shell against the wind, not decoration. Engineering. This is why the ledger of who survived this cold carries an uncomfortable footnote. Neanderthals occupied these landscapes for hundreds of thousands of years and, by most current evidence, never developed this technology. No eyed needles appear at their sites. Some researchers argue this gap is one factor, among several debated ones, in why Homo sapiens expanded into the coldest environments on the planet and Neanderthals did not. Not a settled verdict, but hard to ignore. You are wearing that needle's work right now. Someone spent hours in low firelight so a person they would never meet could survive a night they would never witness. Hour 6 brings the third system online, your extremities. Frostbite starts as the same vasoconstriction from hour 1, continued long enough fingers, toes, ears, and nose get so little blood, the tissue freezes at the cellular level. Early on, this is reversible. Hours longer, it is not. Clinicians divide accidental hypothermia into stages by core temperature, and the gap between them is not gradual. It is a cliff. Mild hypothermia sits around 32 to 35 degrees Celsius, shivering hard, mind still clear. Moderate hypothermia begins around 28 to 32 degrees, and something strange happens. The shivering stops because the body has run out of fuel to shiver with and decides, protect the core, nothing else. A drop of roughly 4 degrees separates a person thinking clearly from a person losing the ability to reason. It has a name, paradoxical undressing. As regulation fails, some people, disoriented, start removing their clothing. A catastrophic misreading of a body registering blood flow at the skin as heat rather than crisis. Rescuers have found hypothermia victims partially undressed in freezing conditions, a detail so counterintuitive that early accounts assumed an assault had taken place. It was the cold itself, working through a brain that had run out of resources to interpret its own signals. If you were alone on that step, this is the hour that kills you. Not a predator, not a fall. Your own mind, quietly, deciding the coat was the problem. This is why nobody who survived this world survived it as one body. Every serious reconstruction of how humans endured the last glacial period converges on the same answer, not a better coat. Other people. At Mezhyryk, in central Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered circular structures built almost entirely from the bones of woolly mammoths, jawbones stacked into walls, tusks arched overhead. The dwellings date to the harshest phase of the last glacial maximum, with hearths mapped inside, some fueled with bone in a landscape too treeless for enough wood. Picture the geometry. Not a shelter to keep one body alive, a shelter to keep a fire alive. Bodies ringed around it, backs to the cold, the bone wall breaking the wind that would otherwise strip the heat away as fast as the fire produced it. A person alone loses heat to the whole surrounding world. A person inside that ring loses heat to almost nothing. This is the moment the story stops being about one body failing in order and starts being about why we never let a body fail alone. If you are still with me this far in, you already understand something most people never stop to consider. Survival out here was never solo. It was a logistics problem, solved by people who trusted each other enough to sleep back to back with a fire between them and the dark. Day 2 begins with a different machine than the one that started day 1. Glycogen is gone. Ketosis is underway. Your liver converting fat into ketone bodies, protein sparing, burning fat before it dismantles muscle you need to walk, to hunt, to carry firewood, not decline. A design refined across every winter your ancestors failed to outrun. But fuel bought on credit is still a debt. Cognitive clarity frays exactly when the margin for error shrinks to nothing. This is why the people who built fires in rings, who sewed tight seams, who slept in circles instead of alone, were not sentimental. They were solving an arithmetic problem where isolation multiplied the odds, and company divided them. By the end of day 2, if the fire held, if the bone wall broke the wind, if the people beside you stayed awake in shifts, your core has not fallen past that 4-degree cliff. Fingers watched and rewarmed rather than left to freeze past reversibility are intact. Your body, running on fat instead of sugar, has bought the time it needed for the sun to return. You did not survive because you were tougher than the cold. Nobody is tougher than 14 degrees colder than the global average, sustained across a full glacial period. You survived because 40,000 years before you were born, someone learned to sew. And because the people around you understood a fire needs bodies willing to stay awake beside it, watching for the shivering to stop. The real discovery in this sequence is not really about the Ice Age. Every system your body has for surviving cold evolved to buy time, and time only matters if something waits on the other side. For most of our history, that thing was other people awake, close enough to notice. We built the modern world so no one would run that arithmetic alone. Somewhere in that trade, we may have lost the instinct that once made a circle of bodies around a fire feel less like shelter and more like the only real defense the species ever had. What does it say about us? That the thing which once meant survival, someone else, awake, close enough to notice, is what so many people now go without for weeks and call ordinary.